It's time for Where You Live with Gene and Tony, the show that's all about owning, buying, selling, renting, and association management. If it involves a home, we'll talk about it. Here's your chance to get your homeowner questions answered. From the Concierge Landscape Studios, here's Gene and Tony.
Needed the shelter of someone's arms, and there you were. Needed someone to understand my ups and downs.
Welcome back to Hour 2 of Where You Live with Gene and Tony. I'm Gene Sullivan.
I'm Tony Crockett.
And we today have been talking about a lot of different topics today. What's on your mind? You could give us a call today. The number is 651-289-4488. We've talked about someone's right to be able to display the American flag. We are going to be talking in a little bit about property taxes. There's a case where people living in a homeowners association may be unfairly taxed, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But if you were just joining us now, in the last couple segments, we were talking a little bit about answering the question, how do you know when your bylaws need updating? And we kind of covered a number of things. Tony, what were a couple of things on the list?
Well, sometimes older documents will specify the date and time of an annual meeting or the date and time of a board meeting. They may say you have to have your annual meeting on the second Tuesday of September, and that may not be practical. And that's also not an earth-shattering issue, so you should be able to change those things. Sometimes the terms of the board members is not practical. If it calls for only one-year terms, that means every year you're electing an entirely new board. That doesn't make sense.
You can have a complete turnover.
That's right.
Yeah.
It does not make sense for continuity and experience. Maybe your documents should better state qualifications for serving on the board. Perhaps they don't say anything about whether you have to be an owner. They may not say anything about being current with your assessments in order to serve on the board. Quorum requirements are sometimes very, very high in older documents, and it's maybe impossible to get a quorum for your meetings.
Quorum just means what percentage of homeowners need to be together in order to be able to hold that meeting to say that it was a documented and an official meeting of the association. Another
one I've seen that's caused problems for associations is the number of board members that are required. You know, there's some larger associations that will say you have to have 7 board members. You have to have 9 board members. I've even seen 11 board members required for an association that had 250 units. But it was very, very difficult for them to find 11 people willing to serve on the board.
No, I've seen in some cases where where that has been a little bit more. What's the word I'm looking for? I guess flexible, where they've said that the board may consist of anyone between 3 to 9 members.
Okay, yeah.
That way it allows for a smaller number if
fewer or more. Yeah.
Another issue that I think is kind of big one for folks to take a look at, and that is, do your bylaws hinder your ability to adequately raise assessments in order to meet the operating costs? Sometimes you'll see something that says, well, you can't have more than a 3% increase in any given year.
Right. That's right. The board cannot implement any more than 3%.
Or
and
5%.
We know, and sometimes 5% is not adequate. In order to raise the dues higher than that, you have to have a meeting of all the members, and all the members have to vote on the issue. And that's a tough thing to accomplish sometimes.
You know, I think when something like that was written, I think people back when that was being written just didn't have it in their mind. What could change in a person's in an operating budget of a property that would change that? I remember with one homeowner association condominium, so they had all of the gas and heat, water, all of that, those utilities were included
in the assessment.
In the assessment, and that year there was a 20-25% increase in heating costs. And because of that alone was more than the 5% that they could that they
increase
could
their
increase
assessment.
the
Yeah,
assessment to.
I saw that happen with insurance rates back in the early part of this decade after the dam ice problems in '02 and '03 or
Yeah.
'01 or '02, whenever it was. The ice dams is what
Yeah.
I'm referring to. I had a property whose insurance premium quadrupled. And fortunately, that association had no limit on how much the board could increase the dues. They had to increase them $35 that year, and that represented about a 25% increase.
Yeah. So when we're talking about having something greater than 5%, it's not because of a board that just wants to just be careless in just saying, "Oh, doesn't matter
Right.
what the dues are."
Right.
But when you have those kinds are those expenses that we talked about, insurance, gas, water, those are things that you can't go without. Those are hard expenses.
And
They're
you have
not-
no control over it.
Yeah, you
it's
have no
not about
control.
using less to save money or finding a different service or provider to save money.
Yeah. Another would be do your bylaws place unworkable restrictions pertaining to rentals? How about that?
That's a big topic, near and dear to my heart. Yeah, and there will be arguments on both sides of this issue. People will say our documents do not restrict rentals enough, so we want to amend them.
Yeah.
Others, like myself, will say, please do not restrict rentals. Please adopt rules and regulations to control and manage rentals. But I say remove those restrictions, and especially in the economic times we're in right now, a lot of people are going into foreclosure that might have saved their ownership had they been able to rent their unit.
Have to be a little bit more flexible,
That's
a little
right.
bit more adaptable.
That's right. The fewer restrictions you have, the more flexibility
Yeah.
you have.
What's another one that comes to mind for you that
Oh,
you hear?
pets is always a hot issue. Perhaps you want breed restrictions in your documents and there are none, or perhaps you want to lift weight limits because they're not really enforceable. or you've learned that it's not about the size of the dog, it's about whether the owner's responsible or not.
Oh, and Fido's not going to do anything but sit in front of the TV eating bonbons, so you can't get him to lose weight. So it's just not going to happen.
That's right. And who, like Dave Schultz in our office always says, who's going to hold the weigh-in every year to weigh all the dogs to see if they meet the limit?
Yeah, some of them are just untenable because you can't. You pull your hair out trying to enforce it.
Yeah.
Another one that's big, and this is one that we covered on our show before, and that's dealing with 55-plus senior communities. And that you have to take a look at how it is written, where there are prohibitions, who can and can't live with you.
Right.
A lot of times they'll say people can't live here that are under a certain age.
Right. Under
And-
55.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think what they mean is, as a homeowner,
right.
but some of the issues we had, do you remember maybe a month or so back, it was in property management in the news, here was a grandmother in Florida who needed some assisted living, a little bit. She could continue to live on her own, but she needed a little help. So her son and son and daughter-in-law had a son, her grandson, who now needed to go to college. He was encouraged to go to college down in Florida, live with grandma
Sure.
to give her that little bit of assistance.
that you needed.
Makes sense. But then here the board came and said, you have someone living that is under this age restriction,
right.
and it's not allowed.
Right.
I don't think that was the purpose
Of that restriction.
Yes.
That's right.
and
That's
so
right.
you need to think about, again, what are some of the things that are they working for the association? There's
That's right.
nothing there's nothing here that needs to be written in stone and never to be changed.
That's right. So that's a good reason to amend your documents. And as you said at the top of this discussion, Gene, you don't necessarily have to rewrite your entire set of documents. It could mean just an amendment needs to be made.
Well, we've got even more to cover, but I tell you what, folks, we're going to go on to other topics here. But if you would like a copy of this list of what are some of the checklists to know when or not your bylaws need updating, give us a call here at New Concepts, 952-922-2500, and we'll get them to you. We're going to take a break, and when we come back, we'll talk about homeowners and associations that are unfairly taxed. Back after this.